Thanks for tuning in to That's What I Call Marketing, the Cannes Sessions. Brought to you by Freedman International, the international campaign experts taking the pain out of your multi-market campaigns. I'm your host, Conor Byrne, and having worked with Freedman International in my previous role as a global marketing leader, I've experienced firsthand their deep level of expertise and attention to detail as the go-to experts for all international campaign needs. Now, let's get right into today's episode of That's What I Call Marketing, the Cannes Sessions. Well, welcome to That's What I Call Marketing Cannes Sessions, brought to you by Freedman International. Of course, this is the podcast where you will hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Don't forget to rate or review this episode wherever you are listening or watching. It really does help us reach and build on this amazing community of engaged marketers. If you are interested in getting involved with That's What I Call Marketing, our sponsorship kit is now available on our website, that'swhatIcallmarketing.com/sponsor. Well, for many of you, today's guest needs no introduction. He is the controversial, outspoken marketing professor. No, it is not Scott Galloway. It is the one and only Mark Ritson. Now, when Mark said he would meet me at Cannes, I thought it was going to be like trying to get Bono down Grafton Street, getting him into the press room. But Mark was not only on time, but early for our meeting and was gracious with me, rushing in, pumping sweat, having run from the other side of the beach. And he was in no rush to finish the interview. And honestly, it does not disappoint. We start with something I hadn't heard Mark talk much about at all in other podcasts, his early interest in marketing and his experiences with global brands. And as we are at Cannes, we talk about Cannes, and Mark criticises the overemphasis on creativity. We hit on Mark's views about the decline of American marketing education, the importance of market orientation, and the misconceptions around brand purpose. We debate the role of pre-testing, the challenges facing small brands, the future of AI and marketing. To wrap up, Mark has some humorous and meaningful advice for young marketers. If you're passionate about marketing and looking to gain insights from one of the industry's leading episodes, this is an episode just for you. I would recommend, though, that maybe you don't play this episode in the car with kids around, so parental warning advice is now being stuck on this episode. Enjoy. Mark, thanks a million for joining me.
My pleasure, Connor.
It's brilliant to have you here, and that's what I call marketing. Listen, first off, nearly a year. How's the baby going along? How's everything?
Oh, very good, very good. He's a ranger, as we say in Australia. So he's red-headed, which I don't know where that comes from. I thought it was very dark. But no, he's a good little fella, and he'll turn one next month. And once he really gets walking, we can get him to the beach and things get a lot easier.
Yeah.
I've spent a year with him strapped to my front.
Have you?
Oh, aye. So I'm ready for I'm ready for him to start
walk.
doing his own thing, for him to get off my front, you know?
But listen, I was kind of looking back and look, there's a lot about Mark Ritson out in the public domain, but I hadn't really found a lot about kind of what got you into marketing in the first place. What drew you in?
I always did it. It's a really interesting lack of interesting answer because I've always done it. I went to university to do marketing, in the 80s. So I just always, that's what I wanted to do. And that's always been my interest. I've never lost the interest, never questioned the interest. I got pretty disappointed in the UK because most of the marketing professors I met in the sort of early 90s all wanted to be something else.
Okay.
They all wanted to, they came from geography or something. And it was only when I got to America that I found, marketing professors that wanted to do marketing and were working in marketing. And that was my main attraction. And I think I'm unusual in the sense that a lot of the colleagues I work with in academia wanted to be a professor and marketing was their route.
Okay.
But I had no interest in being a professor. I just wanted to do marketing and ended up in that place because I just kept working on it,
Working on the academia side.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say academia. It was just I was really interested in the history of marketing, the theories of marketing, marketing principles.
Yeah.
So if you keep doing it long enough, you end up doing a PhD, and then you end up becoming an assistant professor, and then an associate professor, and just goes on.
You worked with some incredible brands, incredible global brands. I'm fascinated by kind of the international marketing and what it takes to do good marketing internationally. I'd love to hear kind of some of your experience and learnings from doing that work.
It was interesting. I mean, I started out it was a consulting career off the back of academia to begin with. So I was I was at London Business School when it really all started going that way. And in London, it was all about working for the global companies in their headquarters in London or in Europe. And then when I moved to Melbourne Business School, it was much more about working in Asia Pacific in the regional teams. It was an interesting flip. And it really changed how I looked at marketing, to go from the global teams who were like, why don't the countries do what we want them to do? Yeah. I got to the country teams and they're like, the global teams are just don't get it. So I saw both sides of it relatively early in my career. I learned from all my clients. I mean, consulting is an interesting game. There's a lot of consultants now, a lot more than there used to be. Brand consulting didn't really exist. So it was a really good market to be in back in the 90s, And it's a cheat, right? As long as you can get enough gigs, it starts to build into proper experience of a tiny little thing.
Yeah.
And even the most experienced CMO has not seen and experienced as many things that you have, and that metabolism is extraordinarily useful.
Yeah. That global local thing, it is fascinating.
It's never going to be fixed, right?
Is it not?
It's never. There is no. I always say to everyone I'm talking to who asks about it, it's not you. Everyone's fucked, right? First of all, the best I ever saw, I was talking to my mini MBAs about it last week, is Roche. Roche had a really good approach whereby you couldn't work in the global team in Switzerland if you hadn't worked in a country marketing team. That sounds screamingly obvious, but most global marketing teams are populated by lovely but entirely inappropriate marketers who don't know what the fuck they're doing yet. And, you see these brand plans coming out of global, and, there's, 89 slides, and they've got a fucking SWOT and a PEST and all that nonsense, all the indicators of shit brand planning. And it's because they've never done it, right? And it's it's very hard to work with country or regional teams who know their global team aren't as good as them, but they've got control of the budgets, they've got control of the products, so they have to play ball.
Yeah.
And that's a tension that I've seen, so many times. And it fits in with the other transition, which is, as much as America has led the world of marketing, it's now very much behind in many organizations. So for American global companies, you've also got that added challenge of, they're just not as advanced in many of the areas of advertising effectiveness and brand strategy that some of the foreign teams are, which wasn't the case. I don't know. I was in New York last week. We talked about it. I think something to do with the business schools are largely now pointless. I mean, they still exist and they still teach MBA students. But when I was coming up, you had David Archer and you had Kevin Keller and you had these legendary guys. And before me, it was Paul Green. And there were legendary marketing professors who literally produced the knowledge,
Yeah.
And then they just kind of disappeared because, as business schools are populated by lovely, smart people who teach marketing but don't do any marketing. Not good enough. Not good enough. And so they've been largely supplanted by a knowledge system that comes out of Byron Sharp and Binet and Field and all of these other people, which is faster and more applied and better and more accessible. I don't think the Americans are as tuned into it, as everyone else is. I mean, we've got fucking John Legend and I don't know who it is, Mariah Carey or someone being interviewed by what's her face that works with Scott Galloway, right?
Yeah.
That's what the Americans are doing. It's just horseshit.
Well, I was going to say, because there are a lot of...
I mean, what the fuck am I... John Legend is a lovely man, wonderful singer. What the fuck am I going to learn about marketing from John fucking Legend? It's a fucking joke. It's a fucking joke.
You should go and find out.
I'm definitely not going to that, because I'm going to go to a useful session from proper marketers who might teach me something other than how to write nice tunes and make love to Chrissy Teigen, for fuck's sake.
You might, maybe get into jingles with them. Because there are a lot of Americans here. It's a huge amount of Americans.
It's the big advantage of Cannes. It's so well done, and it's my first time here, right? And one of the big advantages already apparent to me is they've actually managed to create a proper, European American nexus, which really doesn't happen a lot. So Cannes is impressive. Apart from John Legend being here, it's impressive.
Your first time at Cannes, I was going to get to that a bit later, but you brought it up. You have been, maybe critical is unfair, but
I've been super fucking critical, Connor,
You reposted the thing last week about the article you wrote, was it 10 years ago with the
It's
blank
about 10
page?
years ago, blank page. But I've said lots of other inappropriate things. And I just want to apologize to Essential, partly because I think, a couple of people have said to me, if you don't go to Cannes, you can't critique it.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And also Essential's a very big, powerful company now, and I want to apologize to them because they are very important. I want to make it very clear that I'm a big admirer of them.
all they do.
But yeah, Cannes, what I'm going to talk about is how great Cannes is in my talk this week, but also how overstated creativity is in this whole thing. Do you know what I mean? So I'm still being a complete fucker, but on a sort of slightly lower. Or maybe higher level.
Because you're on a stage.
Yeah. Look, I apologize. On my talk, I open by apologizing, while also putting a few of the best excerpts up from my various columns over the years. The best one was the one where I did, and I reread it, and I was like, that's quite good. There's a paragraph there where it's like, not since Rommel invaded North Africa have so many old white men be exposed to so much sunshine. So, you know what I mean? It was good.
Well, look at me. I'm sweating.
That's what I'm talking about. And me too, what am I saying? So yeah, no, I've been a little bit critical of Cannes. My point is the creativity thing is over fucking done. Do you know what I mean? Big time.
In what way?
It's not that important, Connor. Sorry, it's not. It's important. I'm not Gary Vee saying it's completely worthless or it's everything.
Ask you to take your feet off the table.
Yeah. It has a role to play, particularly in communications, but in the grand scheme of marketing. I think my score tomorrow, I produce a very specious quantitative instrument, and I think we end up with creativity is 3.4% important to marketing.
So what's the other 96.6?
We've got a whole ton of stuff to do with research, segmentation, then the strategy, positioning, which is a dog's basket at the moment, targeting, which is the most fucked up it's ever been. We've got pricing that no one here appears to want to talk about. There's product development, which is about 400 times more important than communications. But I'll tell you something, this love of liquid death, right? What a load of fucking bollocks that is. So here's why everyone likes liquid death, right? Because it's an example of a fucking marketing success without any kind of product. And that's where we've got to, right? That's the hero product because it's literally tap water, right?
Yeah.
So everyone that follows Seth Godin, who talks mostly bollocks all the time, is able to say, yeah, it's not the product, it's the marketing that does it, right? So he plays into that trope.
Yeah.
Except that's not true. It's fucking rubbish. The product is more important than anything else. And marketing should be involved in it. But we're too busy talking about fucking AI and creating ads to actually get involved in product augmentation and improvement, which is the most important thing. So that's why I'm hard on creativity, because there's bigger fish to fry.
But a lot of marketers and senior marketers, which this place is full of, CMOs, are not involved with product and pricing.
No, and that's because they're soft. It's because the companies quite correctly have worked out they don't know what the fuck they would do because they're advertising people, right? So part of it is related to the fact that the marketers we're talking about are communications people. Now, in other cases, there are good marketers, and I've worked with a lot of them, and my advice to those marketers is, okay, you're not controlling new product development. First of all, marketers never did control it. And second of all, I'm not that interested in new product development, right? Let the people in Zurich or Chicago make a new product. Once it comes off the banana slide and goes into market, all the product elves in R&D aren't interested anymore. That's the time when marketing gets involved. And I'd replace new product development with existing product improvement. Then we can get to work, right? But we can't get to work if we're too busy worrying about a new ad campaign. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which in the scale of things, not as important as the usability, optimization of the product, but we've gone AWOL on that.
Is the risk, though, then, that what marketers will end up doing is talking about the product? And we see that in B2B, which is an absolute shit show.
Yeah.
Where it's outside or inside out, I've product features that I need to talk about, and that's all we do. And we get horrible, horrendous work as a result of it.
Maybe, but I think that's where with communications, you've got, again, I've got a particular take on positioning. I think, again, it's very poorly done. I think with positioning, we've got very dogmatic about it. Ehrenberg Bass are banging on about category entry points. Others talk about how benefits are more important than features. I actually don't care. What I care about is that we aim for the 3 things on top of salience that we want the consumer to think when she thinks of the product, right? That could be a feature. I don't think that's always, obviously if I've got a relevant benefit can be superior. But a lot of the time we don't have that ability. So my point is, play a category entry point if that's the right thing. Play a feature if that's the right thing. Jesus, play a purpose on the rare occasions it is the right thing. But let's stop the dogmatic horseshit that comes out of Ehrenberg Bass with their scientific nonsense that says, don't do that, do it this way, that's better. That's not how this works, And positioning should be a backwards approach. It should be a Catholic approach, small c, in the sense that we'll look at what serves us best in the brain of the consumer. And to give Ehrenberg Bass its credit, although I don't like a lot of their nonsense on distinctiveness over differentiation, I do respect the saliency stuff. And the first job of positioning is to bring the brand to mind. And they're absolutely right. And I don't care what other people say. You're old enough to know this too. It wasn't there before Ehrenberg Bass put it there. There's a lot of old fuckers, I shouldn't say cunt, that's not appropriate. There's a lot of old fuckers who say, we've always had salience. The word existed, but not the way Ehrenberg Bass had developed it brilliantly. So positioning is salience in my world, plus a couple of things being deliberately vague that we can position on.
Being deliberately vague because it differs?
Yeah, because I don't think you can be dogmatic enough to say category entry point, benefit over feature. I don't think that helps us. I think you have to have them on the table.
Yeah.
And then I think, you have to work back from the consumer and the 3 Cs and say, right, if I had 2 brain cells, what are the 2 things I want to drop in other than the salience and the brand itself? And I think that's the art of it. But I would be very clear that it's 1 or 2 things, and that I would stand by the fact that 98% of brands have no chance for relative differentiation because they have too much in their positioning, and it's useless.
Right. You've talked about consumer there a couple of times. Have we lost sight of the consumer? I mean, everyone says marketer. I mean, Cheryl Shackle, who you know well, said CMOs need to be in the boardroom because they're the voice of the consumer.
That's totally right.
But are they the voice of the consumer?
No, they're not. I mean, it's a great point. So I teach it as market orientation, and I believe it's the most important concept in marketing. And what it means is our opinion doesn't matter, and we have to do that 180 where we stop looking at consumers from Cannes and talking, about millennials and how they want this and don't want that and all that useless nonsense. And we have to do the full 180 and see how they genuinely look at us. And the minute you do that, magical things happen. Brand purpose largely falls away. Because what do you know? No regular working man or woman gives a fuck about what the toothpaste brand thought about coronavirus or world hunger, right?
Yeah.
And what comes to the fore is salience, for example, because suddenly you realize, they don't even think about me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that practical test where you open your refrigerator and go, right, look at what you as a consumer, not a marketer, have bought. Now begin to understand the real game. We're very dislocated from it here. Very, very dislocated. And Sherilyn's right. During Corona, the one small smidgen of CMOs, starting with P&G, who had people that knew what they were doing, they weren't doing advertising. They were informing the board, this is what the consumer is going through, because that's our superpower. Galloway said the same thing, and it's right. The best thing we can do is connect with consumers and bring that into the company. It's too much about advertising to them and not enough about understanding, where they're coming from.
And so, marketers may not be speaking enough to consumers. I mean, I previously we did a whole, I called it insights, but we were just talking to consumers, and we weren't asking them about what they liked about the product. We were asking them about their life, what they were doing.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, look, there's some good research Kantar have done where, if you look at, how important is sustainability to you as a consumer, you'll get 40, 50, 60%, so it's very important, very, very important. But if you do it more as you were suggesting, and you just go, right, tell me how you bought that dress, and you don't introduce any attributes, it drops to 2-3%.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because now you're doing it in a grounded, inductive way with a proper consumer orientation. And I happen to think that's super important. Yeah, but we're full of shit in the industry, mate. We're full of shit. You know what I mean? I mean, we're living in a post-purpose era, which is great. We're not quite there. There's still a bunch of befuddled idiots still trying to peddle purpose, right? But for the most part, we've suddenly dropped it, right? You'll see a distinct lack of submissions about all that nonsense we had. And again, it was so simple, but nobody got it. It's like, you can have a purpose, right? Have one, right? Just stop with the shit where it makes you loads of money, because that's not why purpose works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'll cost you, but that's okay, because the purpose of purpose is purpose. Like, I have rescue dogs at home, right? It's not because it's going to make me money. It's because I believe in looking after dogs. And if companies got the fact that if we're here for racial equality, if we're here to save the planet, as I think companies should be, you may not want to market it, you may, but either way, it's going to cost you money, and that's all right, because you fucking believe in it. You know, Unilever's nonsense, fucking nonsense, right? Such a smart company full of such good people wasn't to try and, follow the purpose agenda. It was to try and argue with really stupid quantitative data that purpose was going to make them more money. And nobody talks about it here, if you notice. Their results went completely down the shitter, right? Completely down the shitter. And we didn't talk about it for the 2 years they were going down the shitter, right?
But that I think a lot of brands have moved away from purpose, and a lot of other initiatives that they started, during COVID, and it's probably because it's costing them money, so they were all out there doing it, and then teams of people. I know teams of people that were let go, and they were in kind of DEI teams and all that, and they were along with marketing, were some of the first to go.
Well, and the opportunity cost as well, right? So not only were they spending a ton of money on people and stuff that, wasn't necessarily going to return, while they were all doing that and talking about that, we took our eyes off the salience, the relative differentiation, the pricing, the product development, the stuff we should have been focused on. So I hope we get to a better place as the economy sort of picks up.
We talked a bit about kind of the role of the CMO and in the C-suite, but I think, and we've touched on a few of the things here, where we don't do ourselves any favors. We change our names, we become different things.
There's some session here about rebranding brand, and you're like, right, there's one session I'm not going to go to. I'm going to try and firebomb. Do you know what I mean? Rebranding brand, that's great, fucking wonderful that is. It's like Kevin Thingy's book about love marks, the future beyond branding. It's well done, mate. That's just what we needed, you to go beyond branding and introduce something new, right? That was stupid. That's great. You know what I mean? Fucking hell.
Well, why are we doing it? Because
we're a stupid bunch of soft wankers. Is that the answer you're looking for, Connor? No, but it's true. We're pathetically superficial. We're venal. Marketers are driven by the desire to... First of all, they don't understand. So the 4 Ps is my favorite, right? So if you look at Jerome McCarthy, he's one of my favorite academic thinkers. He's been dead sort of 25 years, right? Jerome McCarthy, first of all, wrote one of the great... He was a stone salesman, and he went back to business school to learn marketing. I love that, right? Selling blocks of stone. And then he went on a Ford scholarship, and he was at Harvard and MIT. And he wrote this really good book, which I've read, in 1960, about tactical marketing, and he invented the 4 Ps. The marketing mix was around before, but he really conceptualized it. You've now got all these Muppets, an army of Muppets, right, that go with the 4 Ps. Never read it, don't really understand it, but I'm going to bring another P here. I'm going to bring in process or pride or, philandering or whatever the fuck, right? And first of all, the chances of your extra 2 words both beginning with P is about 500 to 1, which proves it's fucking horseshit. Second of all, I'm so annoyed with these people. You need to read and learn marketing before you try and either A, teach it, or B, change it. There's a guy, it's a terrible incident about a couple of months ago on LinkedIn. There's a guy posted his map of marketing, right? And it was fucking ridiculous. And he said, I'm welcoming feedback. And I actually thought, this will get me in trouble. I'm going to do it. I literally said to him, I love you and I respect you as a person. But your model is so stupid, you should go and read more about marketing before you do stuff like this. Partly because I think it's embarrassing for you, but also someone might read this and think it's right, and it's so wrong. I got so much abuse from all these fuckers saying, how dare you say that to this guy? And I'm like, I'm playing the ball, not the man. I'm not saying I'm smart. What I'm saying to him is, there are hundreds of things that have been written and proven and developed. You don't know enough to advise people yet. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying I'm smarter than you or better than you. Keep myself out of it. You just need to learn more. Do you know what I mean? And these guys that turn up and change the 4 Ps, they've never read the 4 Ps. They don't know what the 4 Ps are. I just think, it's the problem we've got with marketers is they all want to reconceptualize and they don't learn their trade.
Yeah, which is, again, the CMO comes in and wants to change everything, but can I ask you one question on that, right? Just a thought. Did you ever think of replying to him privately and not publicly?
I did.
Did you?
I did.
Okay.
I leaned out to him and said, look, if you...
I'm just curious.
No, I did. I also, before all the shit happened, I posted the thing saying don't do it. And then I went back and I said, hey, listen, if you want to come and I'll give you a reading list and I'll show you what we do in Mini MBA and you can have a look at that because you seem like a good guy, blah, blah, blah. So I get all this grief and he goes, why didn't you email him directly? I'm like, oh, whatever, right? You don't know that I didn't.
Yeah.
And then the guy himself, the next day, without tagging me, does this big post about how he replied to me in a lovely way. Next day, this guy trolled me, and making it into a PR thing. It's just a fucking it's a toilet. You know what I mean?
But on that, like on the reading, the education, the learning, I mean, there is so much available, and you don't have to. I mean, look, yes. Sales pitch, you have a mini MBA, but people don't have to do it, right? And
well, they do. They do, Connor. It turns out they do. No, they don't. No, I'm totally
they're idiots if they don't.
They should. They should. That's my main message. Let's make that clear, readers. You should. No. For 1,800 quid, you got to do it. It's so good. It's so good. No, you're right. I mean, I think what you do need to... I do think it's possible to self-study with YouTube and all that. I don't think it's the best route. I think you can find an area where you can learn your chops from the right courses. Definitely not just mine. There's tons. You can go to the IPA, you can go everywhere else. So no, I think that's it. It's having the humility to learn a bit first. But we don't live in that era. We live in the era of, I've read this thing called the 4 Ps. Let me get on YouTube and explain why you need blah, blah, blah in there, right?
Yeah.
That's the era we're in.
Yeah, like it's clickbaity, but I certainly think people need to read like books, and even you've talked about Aaron Bass and some of the stuff that they do, but read the book. People should read their books, and then
that's a hard journey.
Hard books to read.
Yeah, they're good books. Don't get me wrong. We did a thing in London last week saying, we were promoting Mini MBA to corporates, and among the big CMOs, and one of them said, look, I'd love to, but we're already kind of using Aaron Bass stuff. Yeah. And their training, and I said that's great. I said I'm consistent with their stuff, but I have a little bit of other stuff. And also I said, my courses are really interesting and fun. And no one's ever said that ever about Aaron Bass. Do you know what I mean? And I looked at him and I said, it's boring, isn't it? And he went, it's very boring. I said, well, the single bit of feedback we get from Mini MBA when it finishes next week from most people, not most people, a lot of people is, I'm going to really miss it, and I don't know what I'm going to do next week, right? Okay. And I said, no one's given Aaron Bass that feedback.
They might miss it for different reasons, because their brains won't hurt anymore.
Yeah, that's right. They want to miss it, right? They want room in their heads back, right? So, yeah, it's got to be fun. It's got to be fun.
And I was reading this week that, and maybe this goes back to some of the things you've talked about, like the problems, but 70% of the population distrust advertising. We're behind banking and energy. In the UK, what is going wrong?
No, but I think it's never going to change, you know what I mean? It's more, I draw attention to the fact that we have all these people here talking about, purpose and trust and initiatives and all that, and yet you go and talk again to working men and women and they're like, oh yeah, advertising's fucking awful. I hate everyone that works in it. You forget how much people hate us, right? Yeah. And that will never change. It's not, the people aren't wrong. It's the industry that doesn't get it. And once you understand, nobody believes us. No one likes our brand. No one gives a fuck about our brand. You manage it better. Yeah. You see what I mean? You manage brands better when you realize nobody gives a fuck.
I think the most important thing is no one cares. Nobody cares about your brand.
I think that if you look at the average marketer, they spend 8 hours a day focused on a single brand. Yeah. The minute you walk into the house of an average consumer, what you discover is they don't think about your brand ever. And there are 9,000 brands touching them all the time, right? The minute you get that, you go, oh, no, I get it now. It's completely different, right? It's marketers that have lost that insight that are causing the problems. And that's the lack of market orientation. Yeah, it's like creative awards, right? I cannot be more... I'm very supportive of Cannes. I think it's wonderful. We make that clear.
We've made it. Let's make it
let me reinforce that I think this is an amazing, life-changing experience. But the idea that in little rooms here, advertising and marketing people are judging the creative worth of ads is not just stupid, it's completely wrong. Do you know what I mean? Completely wrong.
Do you think then,
It's completely fucking stupid.
Do you think things like the Effies then are more...
No, the Effies are slightly better. They could be a lot better.
Right.
Because, ultimately, and we're in an interesting place now. If you look at with System 1, who are doing such a good job, you could argue that we could just employ System 1 to work out what are the most effective ads of the year and give out the ads that way. Why? It's a lot more effective than all the politically correct Americans.
There's no yachts there. Maybe they have a System 1 yacht. If that happens.
But we could just put it in the computer and announce it here. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But the point is, if you look at the last 3 years of creatively awarded work around the world, it is literally identical to a random basket of unawarded ads in terms of effectiveness. So, I wonder what John Legend thinks about that, right? Fuck. Maybe he could pick a good ad.
Pre-tested songs. You mentioned System 1. I have to ask you about pre-testing and...
Love it. Love it.
I can't remember, was you or Peter? I think one of you said people are idiots if they don't do pre-testing.
It was definitely me. Peter's too polite to say shit like that. Peter sort of explains it in a polite way.
And then you go, they're idiots.
I'm just like, yeah, fucking idiots. So here's the story. So when I was growing up in marketing, pre-testing really was one of those things that you went either way on. And I worked for enough good CMOs who all said the same thing, which was, I've done my research, I've got my strategy, I've briefed my agency, I respect my agency, I know they will come with the right work, and I'm not going to dirty that with research. And I kind of went that way. There was another group saying, listen, you can do research there as well. What's changed is the thing we test is now a perfectly representative animatic, not some dodgy storyboard. Yeah. What's changed is the ability to use a more System 1 style analytic approach, not, do you like it or not, you know what I mean? And the ability to turn it around in 2 days. You would be, and they're going to charge you about 5,000 quid to test one of your 30-second ads. You would be an absolute moron be a big brand and about to pump 400, 600, 900, 1,000 quid into an ad campaign and not spend $5,000 testing it, not just to get the yes/no, but to find out how to improve it as well. Yeah.
So I don't disagree with that at all. And you said something there important, big brand, right?
Yeah.
And the example you showed was the Carlsberg animatic, right?
Yeah.
It was literally like watching the ad as a cartoon.
They just mocked it up,
Phenomenal. But big brands, Carlsberg can afford that. And when I was reading all that stuff about, pre-testing, and I've done pre-testing, I completely agree with what you're saying. I worry about the narrative then for smaller brands who can't afford that. What do they do?
No, they make shit ads, right? I mean, that's the way it goes. I mean, it's
there's no hope.
There isn't. I mean, I get this question a lot when I talk at events, and people say, well, your examples you're using are all from big brands, or big brands can afford pre-testing, or big brands can, have multiple channels. What do you do if you're a small brand? And I say, you stay small and get fucked, right? Because there's some kind of weird narrative that says, the small, agile brand is somehow in an advantageous position. Fuck off. No, they're not. They've got scale disadvantages all over the place. The biggest driver of effectiveness is not creativity, it's how big the brand already is.
Yeah.
Suck it up, man. So, what do small brands do who can't afford to pre-test? They stay small because their ads are much more likely to be shit. Nobody said it was fair. Nobody said this game was fair. There's no equity in this game. It's capitalism, right?
Yeah.
So when people say to me, well, what are you going to do about the Americans being further behind in effectiveness thinking right now? And I'm like, absolutely nothing. It doesn't fucking bother me at all. The clients I work with have a real opportunity in America to smash everyone else by reading more globally. But other than that, I don't care. Do you know what I mean? How do I feel about the fact that marketing is less well practiced now than 10 years ago? Great. The people that study on my course are going to smash it up. Do you know what I mean? It makes it easier for us. That's how I feel,
You were tuned into That's What I Call Marketing, the Cannes Sessions, brought to you by Freedman International.
So for those that, but look, I mean, do you, like that no hope for small brands, I get it. Like, there's lots of evidence that says the small brand, like all the disadvantages are there.
Massive.
But some make it. Is that just chance?
Oh no. There's a couple of things there, right? So let's be not optimistic, but let's be realistic. Hopeful, maybe. So there's a couple of things. First of all, in new categories, right? When new categories spring up and there's virgin fields, or even a subcategory that very cleverly a brand has gone into, which David Archer teaches a lot about, there is then still the opportunity. I mean, Google was a small brand once, and it had the chance. I'm working with these guys, Evidenza, right, with AI. There's no one out there at the moment, right? So that's when small brands have a shot. The other thing they can do, the only other two things they can do, number one, they can be far more aggressive in the way they positioning against the incumbents, the sort of stuff the big guys can't do, right? And the second thing they can do is they can still go in and target niche in order to build their specialty. You know, the more and more we follow the Ehrenberg Bass style insights, which are good for big brands, we're focusing on category entry points, we're trying to target everyone, the more there's room for the smaller brand to go in and subcategory or niche, not because they believe in that shit, but in order to build a foothold and start to get that scale. And if you look at Christensen's stuff on disruption, that's the story, right? You go in and find that small subcategory that no one cares about yet, you build your strength there, and suddenly you turn the tables on the big guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Elf Beauty is probably a good brand that's kind of like grown exponentially. But they've done it in lots of ways. But like advertising has been a part of their journey, right? But as you say, it's a part. It's not the whole story.
For the smaller brands, the bigger investment in advertising does have a special thing, the signaling effect. You know what I mean? So we forget that next to salience, the big advantage, never mind what the fucking ad is, you know, just taking out a full page ad in the FT and going, you know, in my case, mini MBA and just showing the logo is signaling the peacock effect, right? Which Rory always talks about, which is basically saying, look how fucking rich we are, look how confident we are, look how likely we are to stay around, that we're putting these ridiculous, expensive ads out there, right? Yeah. That say nothing other than here's the logo. That's a massive part of what a small brand can do to look bigger. You know?
Yeah, I might do that that's what I call marketing. FT, front page.
It's the way to go if you can afford it, right? I mean,
I certainly can't.
Oh, no, I mean, I don't know what they're charging now, but it's been mind-boggling, right?
Yeah. Well, FT, if you're watching this.
The only thing I always thought with Mini MBA or other smaller brands is getting a really big marquee outdoor slot for like a week, and then parlaying it through direct social media channels afterwards.
Yeah. No, out-of-home is phenomenal for
But the out-of-home guys are smart. They're like, they know what you're up to. Like, you can rent Piccadilly Circus for like, you know, 80,000 quid a day, but you have to do a minimum of 10 days. And you're like, oh, fuck, you know.
I do like out-of-home, though. I wanted to get your thoughts on retail media. What's your view on kind of the role of it?
Legalized blackmail for the most part, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. So I think everyone's, you know, hot for like, you know, retail media is a growing media. Sure, it fucking is, because no supplier that depends on supermarkets can say no. When the retailer says, oh, and you know what, we'd like you to spend blah blah blah, and I think that's the angle I have. You know, yes, it's obviously a great channel for low vol and stuff. We know that. Two things. We know that you can't say no when they're, you know, one of the big retailers is doing 40-50% of your sales. And second, we know that no one ever complains. If you look at all the complaints in the British supermarkets have squeezed the fuck out of their suppliers for 30 years. No one has ever said anything. Why? Because it's a fucking stupid thing to put your head above the parapet. You'll get killed, right? So I get retail media, but I think the bit we should talk about is the legalized blackmail bit, you know, that it also is. When a big supermarket says, and by the way, what we really want you to do is to do X. Yeah. You're going to do X. Do you know what I mean?
Because I was reading Tesco saying it's going to be bigger than TV by 2025. And, you know.
Sure.
But alongside that was their announcement they were putting more digital screens in store.
Sure,
like we've inventory to sell.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like it's money for, and remember, it's from the retailer's point of view who don't have a high margin business, right? Your average supermarket retail margin of what you sell is whatever, you know, it's 20%. Yeah. This is 100% margin.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's an addictive. I worked for Donna Karan once, and I remember looking at their licensing income, and it wasn't just that it was an astonishingly huge figure. It was that it was all pure profit.
Wow.
Straight to the bottom line.
Wow.
See what I mean? Licensing, man. That's fuck.
Do you ever, just so you mentioned that, Brad, like, do you ever kind of want to go back and work with brands? Or you love what you do, clearly, but...
So there's a couple of things happened. So about 10 years ago, I nearly ended up being the CMO of one of the large American drug chains. It's a very strange story. that I still can't properly talk about because it ended up getting all antitrusty. And it ended up being Donald Trump got in and nixed the deal that I would have ended up running a very big amount. And I was up for it. Like the guy that was going to be my CEO, we'd plotted a house and blah, blah. My missus had signed up. We were going to go and do it. And there was an old guy, John, I can't remember his name now, who was the CMO at HSBC, who'd been ex-JWT. And when I worked for him, he was like the guy that built HSBC. He had John Stringham. And he'd said to me, I'd worked 40 years in advertising, and I knew if a great client-side job came along, I would take it.
Yeah.
And I was I remember him saying that, and I thought, if one great one came along, I'd love to do it. But it didn't happen, and that was fine. And then, so I've always been happy doing, my ratio was 10 days of consulting for a day of teaching. So when I was a proper business school professor, about 10 to 1. And that was a good ratio because, A, there was fuck tons of money, and B, I felt that was enough to keep me very sharp. And when I taught at MIT, I mean, some of my best classes were literally, I've just come out of blah, blah, blah. Let's do it for the class. And they fucking loved it, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
You know, we did a whole class on Costco had discounted Dom Perignon in California. And I just took a photo. And it was my best class I ever taught. I just put the photo up for 90 minutes. And the MBA class had to solve the problem. And all they did was suggest stuff that was either stupid or illegal or both. So I kept putting them all in jail in the corner of the classroom, right? And at the end of the class, they're like, okay, what's the answer? And I said, there isn't an answer. There isn't a fix for this. What are you? You're supposed to be at MIT.
Yeah.
Some problems aren't fixable. And they were like this. You know what I mean? The problem I've now got is mini MBA is properly big now. We'll turn over a lot of money this year. And although I'm not the boss of it, I've got people who are bosses and run the team and everything. It is a lot of work. And I'm not consulting at all.
Oh, are you not?
I look like I'll do a couple of... I mean, it's not real consulting anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll spend tomorrow with 2 different companies, but it's the kind of stuff the big knobs do, which I don't like. You know what I mean? Like, it's John Legend stuff. It's not, my
Do you sing?
my style of consulting was you go to their fucking headquarters or affiliate, right? And we get into it for a couple of weeks and we fix stuff and we go out and have cigarettes around the back and we get
proper
it's the only way to go. And I haven't done that in quite a while. So the danger of that is you become Seth Godin, right? Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
You become full of complete shit.
Yeah.
I mean, to give Gary Vee his credit, he's still completely full of shit, lovely fella, but is still involved in it.
Yeah.
And I've been a couple of years now because I'm involved in a very large business. It's going to turn me into the people I don't like soon. So I do have a half-life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereby I've got to be conscious of the fact that I know my onions from 30 years of doing it, but the 30 years are no longer ticking. And I am conscious of that.
And also things change so rapidly that you have to, and you're clearly curious to want to keep learning. But like the risk, like anything, you just kind of go... That's me, whereas there's so much more.
It's something I'm aware of. I mean, the half-life is, it's not over straight away, and, but I'm conscious that I am getting old. I mean, the AI stuff was initially my interest in, I will go and have a look at this because it may or may not be something,
Yeah.
And I've tried my best, but I'm not in there as much as I should. I'm very experienced, that's great. Yeah. And it's great to be older because you really do know your shit, right? But as you say, things change, and that is a concern going forward. I got to be honest with you. And I'm a one-man band, you know what I mean? Like, I'm my own man. So at some point, I'll pull the plug. I'll still write columns because that's more of a journalistic stuff. Yeah. But I think, and the other thing I tell you, I did a job for a large client about just after COVID ended. And because I'd had 2 years off with COVID, and because I was a bit older, like my style of consulting was, it's hard. Like I'll do a day with the team. I'll stay up for I'll go to bed and I'll get up at 3 a.m. and build the next day based on the first day, and we go again. I tried doing it. I couldn't do it anymore. Like I was out of practice.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was too hard. It was too hard. I did it for a long time. So I'm conscious of that now. I'm conscious.
Yeah, the technology is interesting. Actually, do you know what? It was funny. You mentioned James Herman. He was the first person on this podcast that talked about AI. I remember I went back over recently, and he was saying, some of the younger people are using AI. It might be a year and a half ago. Like it's everywhere this week. Like it's phenomenal.
Yeah, you got to be careful. It's AI's everywhere because everyone's full of shit about it. You know what I mean? Like John and Peter run Evidenza who are actually doing synthetic data. I saw them this morning. They'll tell you what's really going on.
Yeah, I'll chat to John tomorrow.
John, no. I mean, those boys are at the coalface. That's super important because everyone's got a fucking point of view about it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, Amir Alaboy, who's in the Middle East for Tim Hortons, he said, like, yeah, people are full of shit. Like, people are making it up because they feel like they have to say something about it. But it's fascinating.
It has. I mean, it's the same old Bill Gates stuff, right? In the sense that we're all. I know a lot of marketers are very stressed about their life, in marketing because they're in their late 20s and they love marketing and they see this as their career as we did. But there's this sort of dark shadow of what the fuck does it turn into, right? And I feel for them a little bit, just a little bit. They're still young.
They're
still young and getting laid and stuff. But for me, it's interesting watching it come in because it will be the 30s. It's still very, very basic. But if you've been around long enough, you've seen these things come in, and they do. When we were doing when I was doing programming of basic computers in like 1982, do you know what I mean? That wasn't it. But by the time Microsoft came along and Google came along, that was it.
Yeah.
And we're going to see that same. ChatGPT isn't it. Do you know what I mean? It's what it agglomerates into.
Yeah, it's going to be,
and it's going to be pretty big. I last week, one of those graphical things where you type in the image you want to create, and it creates it for you, and it is like it is magic. They've started introducing it where you can type your brief, but then AI can retype your brief to make it better.
Oh wow!
That was the first time I got an inkling of it. Of the extra brain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I type a thing and it builds a picture for me. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's a little box you can go for an extra credit. It'll redo it with extra words and make it tighter for you. And you're like, never. That's something I've never seen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then you take it and you can make it even better again. That's what I love about it. It's helping.
It's exactly it. I posted an example of it in my column where I've got my exams coming up for mini MBA, and we got these like 8 sales reps that you have to manage. And one of them is like Tom Suarez, and he's a Hispanic guy from Chicago, and he's best mates with the CEO, and he's really lazy and plays a lot of golf. But he also leverages the fact that he's got connections with the CEO, so you can't fuck with him. This is literally what I typed in, right? Because this is the story in the case study. Just produces this fucking picture of a man, it's just perfect. It's perfect. He's even looking at the camera like, you can't fucking touch me. Like, it's perfect. I did that for all 8 salespeople, every one of them straight off, just perfect.
You can't
right?
touch me.
No, he's there. I'll send it to you. He's in a golf shirt with grey hair, beautiful, quite a good-looking 50-year-old man. Do you know what I mean? Going, you can't fucking
living his best life.
Yeah. So that bit I think comes strong, and in the 30s it will be very interesting. And as I've said to I was talking to Pete this morning, who's in Evidenza. He likes my point that it's not AI versus an incredibly efficient, brilliant marketing system, particularly in B2B. It's, as you know, there's no data, the strategy's weak. You know what I mean? A box will destroy.
Yeah. I can't wait to talk to John about what they're doing.
It's the real deal. I mean, the interesting question for those boys is, I would say, and I've said this to them, is the modern world of startups is, they've got a good little team there in New York, but they need to scale up. Yeah. And to scale up, they have to sell equity. And these days, it seems like the word is don't sell equity. But I think it's the time,
Yeah.
So I know nothing about startups either. But I'm like, you need to fucking scale up.
Yeah.
You can sell a share of this company, not maybe to venture capital, but to any one of the 900 firms that wants to get involved in it. And that will allow you then to get your 25 programmers and go for it.
And they will.
I hope so.
They will. They're great guys. I've taken probably more than I said I would. But listen, any kind of last words of wisdom for any marketers watching? Like, what's the one thing marketers need to be doing?
Well, I mean, I always say, if you're a young marketer, get laid more. I was very guilty of this as a young man. I used to think I was like a 5, and I was actually a 6, 6.5.
You underrated yourself?
I underrated.
That surprises me.
No. You'd be. I'm definitely not in the professional world. I give myself a 9 or a 10. But in terms of my lady killing capabilities, I was always like, oh, I'm not. But I look back on photos, I'm like, I could have mingled and partied a lot more than I did. So if you're young and single, if you're not young and single, I don't care. You mingle more is the first piece of advice. The interesting thing about getting old is you look at photos of yourself and you go, fuck, I wasn't a bad looking guy. And now, and then you look at even photos when you're in your 40s, where at the time you looked at the photo and you're like, God, I look rough. Now you're like, fuck, that's way better than I look now, right?
I wish.
So now, so you realize it's always getting worse, right? It's like the opposite of AI. It's always getting worse. So whenever I look at a picture of myself now, I'm always like, God, I look fucking old. I'm like, but I'll savor this because it's going to be way worse, you know? So no, more. I mean, it's not just about partying and getting laid and stuff, but I think not taking it completely seriously is probably the other thing, right? Enjoy. I was coached by a lovely man called Colin Campbell, who was on the board of LVMH and Moet Hennessy, and Colin had gone down to work at Hennessy when he was 14 years old, and when I was coached by him, he would have been 65. So he'd been there 50 years. And when I started working for LVMH in France, I was extremely Anglo-Saxon. Like, I couldn't get the French thing.
Right.
So they found the most senior Anglo-Saxon dude. And that doesn't mean white in French. It just means, you could be black Anglo-Saxon as far as the French are concerned. What they mean is, les Anglo-Saxon, the idiots in the north, that aren't French and Latin and everything. And so they found me Colin. He was the oldest, most senior Anglo-Saxon in the business. And they said, look, you're going to have to help him because he's struggling. And so Colin sort of took me under his wing, a very charming, lovely man, and really sorted me out. But one of the great stories he told me was his main pleasure was Hennessy. He's worked on Hennessy for a long time. And for the first 45 years of working for Hennessy, people would say, you work for Hennessy? And he'd say, yes. And they'd say, oh, that must be a great job. And he would say, no, it's a very serious thing. And it was only in his final 5 or 10 years that he would say, yeah, you know brilliant. What? It's fun. We sell fun and pleasure and beautiful things. And imagine what it'd be like selling yoga or drills, you know what I mean, versus this. So I think that's the other thing, is take pleasure in the things we sell, and the way we sell it, and the benefits we bring.
Yeah.
I think the purpose thing did get in the way of, a beautifully made thing that helps a consumer has a purpose in and of itself that we can take pride in and pleasure in, right? I mean, I take pleasure in mini MBA. I just refilmed everything in marketing. It took 9 months, right? But I take pleasure in. I mean, I said at the start, you'd have laughed. I got this film crew now because it's a big deal. I used to film it on my own, in my garage, like this, And so now we have a film crew and 6 people and all that. And when we started in October, I got them together and I said, look, I'm going to sound like a wanker, but I'm now going to make my masterpiece. This is it. I've been waiting a long time to get this done right. So we have to move quick, but we have to get it right because I don't want this not to be perfect,
right.
There's been pleasure in the making of that thing, and now there's pleasure in the selling of it because the marketers that do it genuinely go, like, it changes their life, And so there's great pleasure in that.
Yeah.
What is the purpose? The purpose is, to make tons of money and generate shareholder value and all that. But it's to get these lovely marketers and get them to walk out 10 weeks later going, fuck, I know everything. I'm ready to go,
Ready to go. It is. And look, it's a great business, trade, whatever. It's brilliant, and it should be fun. We should enjoy it. And I
think so. I
agree. Mark, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Connor.
Really
I'm married to a girl called Connor.
Are you?
I am. And it's been a source, before we had kids, it was a source of great consternation because we'd check into hotels and the hotel were kind of excited because they'd obviously got a gay couple, Mark and Connor Ritson. And they were visibly disappointed when this very boring hetero couple, and I sort of apologise for her because she just happens to have a man's name, But I've been married to a Connor 20-odd years,
Oh, wow. Where is the name from? Like the
I think her mum, who's an Australian, had aspirations for the Irish Gaelic Celtic thing. The great thing is her maiden name was Ray, and when our son was born, we called him Ray.
Oh, brilliant.
But then where I come from in the Lake District, your middle name is always your mother's maiden name, so his middle name's Ray as well.
Okay, Ray.
So we christened him Ray, and it's stuck. It's stuck.
Listen, thanks a million. Enjoy Cannes. I know how much you're going to love it.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I want to do it in the old school sense of, a bit of drugs, some drink. Oh, no. Am I kidding? I don't know. You got anything?
Listen,
what sort you out after. Turn that off and then we'll have a look in your bag.
Yeah, the bag is full. They took away the security.
I'm just joking, or am I? Find me on the Quasette if you've got anything.
He won't see you.
Woo! I'll show you a purpose. Woo!
Mark, thanks a million.
My pleasure, mate. Good series. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Mark does not disappoint, does he? He is what he is. He is really, really smart, really intelligent, and has strong views, but very open and honest. And I love the way he talked about kind of him thinking about kind of the future of like technology and the concerns he has around that for him. I bumped into him later in the day and he was strolling around the festival. And again, he stopped, had time, and was charming. I'm not saying this because I'm surprised. I don't think you get to the success Mark has had by being an absolute dick. But I think that it's good to share that there is another side. He has strong views, he shares them, it's backed by a lot of knowledge. And I also think it's because he really cares about this profession. He actually wants great work, he wants great marketing, he wants great marketers, because it really has an important role to play in the growth of great businesses. Does he poke the bear? Absolutely, but sure, that's why he is box office. So thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Join us next week where I've got a bumper episode, a doubleheader with Karen Nelson Field from Amplified Intelligence, talking about her new book, her new training, so much more. And Karen Deep from Duolingo, he's the regional marketing director in India, and we talk about the approach of global marketing and local marketing in the Indian market. So for me, your host, Conor Byrne, thanks so much for tuning in.